Yes, assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the program. Now it's just gone 23 minutes past 8 in Johannesburg, South Africa. It is the 10th of July 2020, and 25 years ago, almost to the day, Europe would see one of its worst massacres in recent history. The Srebrenica genocide, as it is now known, in which 7 to 8,000 Muslim Bosniak men were massacred by the Serbian forces. I'm joined now online by veteran journalist Faisal Dawji, who covered this particular war all those years, 25 years ago, and is now going to be sharing some of his experiences. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Faisal.
Walaikum salam. Azhar, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm keeping well. Jazakallah khairan for joining us. It's nice to see you on the Facebook platform as well as broadcasting on our YouTube channel this morning. Now, Uncle Faisal, it must be a very emotional and traumatic, experience for you every year around this time, thinking about what happened all those years ago when you were actually there in the Bosnian War. Take us through some of that history once again.
Azhar, for me, it's a personal journey. It's a personal experience. I live it probably every day when I have my Bosnian coffee in the morning. However, I think that what happened in Srebrenica was a microcosm of a greater cosmic play. Here you have the culmination of years of demonization of the Muslim population. And when the war started in 1992, you got a sense that this was something larger than just a, a normal and ordinary conflict. The viciousness that was perpetrated in smaller massacres throughout Bosnia was a testimony that there was something much greater and very dark about the atrocity. Srebrenica saw between 7 to 8,000 Muslim men killed. But the war itself in Bosnia saw almost 30,000 people killed. This was men, women, children, the old, the young, anyone that had a resemblance of being a Muslim. And for me, the most difficult period was in the early days of the war. I interviewed young women who became part of a systematic campaign of rape. These young women were raped by the Serb army. And I realized then, and many people realized then, that this action, this weaponization of a very evil and very dark period is going to be felt throughout the country. And as the war progressed, you heard reports of hundreds and thousands of women being raped. So this was a deliberate policy of one, trying to negate Muslim identity, and number two is to obliterate the history and the heritage of Muslims. So when we think about the word ethnic cleansing, especially in this time of the virus, we think about something very sanitized, something very clinical, something very medical in terminology. But the cleansing that took place in Bosnia was the total eradication, the annihilation of people from a land. The fact that they didn't achieve total cleansing of the Muslims is the testimony of the Muslims' ability to survive and their resistance. So when we talk about ethnic cleansing and when we talk about Srebrenica, there's a broader history and the broader story of what happened in Bosnia. And we live it every day. We see it whether it's in Somalia, whether it's in Rwanda, whether it's in Syria or anywhere else. It's there. And Srebrenica was just the culmination of this, I call it a primeval act of vengeance against the Muslims.
Now, if you can just take us into the actual massacre of Srebrenica itself and what took place there. It's been described as possibly the worst massacre since World War II, and you've just spoken so passionately about and emotionally about the smaller ones that happened prior to this. But this one stands out to the world right now. What happened on those fateful days between the 11th and 19th of July 1995?
Okay, so one has to remember that in 1993, the UN declared certain areas as safe havens. You had Gorazde and Srebrenica was one of the areas that was declared a safe haven. In other words, it would be protected by UN troops. So there was a population. Srebrenica had a population of about 33,000. Of that, 27,000 were Muslim. And as the war was intensifying, and the UN realized, and there were a lot of reports coming through, that certain areas were under threat by the Bosnian Serb army under the leadership of Ratko Mladić. So the Muslim families were moved to Srebrenica and protected by 500 UN troops. But they were powerless in the face of the Serb army. So the Ratko Mladić and his troops arrived in Srebrenica and separated the men and the women, the young and the old, and almost 7,000 men were taken away. The women were sent to the safe havens under the protection of the UN. However, many were killed along the way. Many were raped and vile things happened to them. And in a systematic 5-day period, young men were executed for the very fact that they were Muslim. Some managed to escape, but they were caught and killed. And slowly, when the news was getting out of Srebrenica, obviously because the UN soldiers were witnesses to it, the Serb army decided to rebury those that were killed and started mass burials in different parts of Srebrenica. And that is why today you find that bodies are being found, and on the anniversary of the massacre every year, people are buried. The bodies are reburied. And when Ratko Mladić came to Srebrenica, he declared a great victory for the Serb army, for the Bosnian Serb. And this is something that one needs to analyze very carefully, because on the anniversary of Srebrenica, the mayor of Srebrenica, Bosnian Serb, is going to have a function to celebrate the great Serb victory. Now, this is unbelievable. Forget about genocide denial. This is celebrating the massacre of thousands of people. The fact that he has denied the genocide is one thing, but the fact that you are celebrating it is something else. It tells you the mentality, it tells you the narrative that they want to pursue. And it is not single individuals who are in denial and celebrating this massacre. It's huge numbers of people, whether it's higher up in the political administration, or it's ordinary people. The fact that in Serb schools in Republika Srpska, which is part of the Bosnian territory, where the Serbs have their own enclave, the school curriculum speaks about the great victory of the Serb nation in Srebrenica. So it tells you something about the very pernicious nature of the narrative around what happened in Srebrenica.
Faisal Dawji, unfortunately, due to the nature of the show that you're in right now, we're a very fast-moving program. We're going to have to leave it there for today. Jazakallah khairan once again for the insight. We continue to speak to you and to unpack the situation and to make people aware of what took place in the past, so we
Absolutely.
don't allow it to happen again in the
Sure.
future, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.